Hello, everyone. Welcome to Stories with Mrs. Reed. We are picking up where we left off in James and the Giant Peach. Chapter 21. Why, it's absolutely brilliant, cried the old green grasshopper when James had explained his plan. The boy's a genius, the centipede announced. Now I can keep my boots on after all. Oh, I shall be pecked to death, wailed the poor earthworm. Of course you won't. I will, I know I will, and I won't even be able to see them coming at me because I have no eyes. James went over and put an arm gently around the earthworm's shoulder. I won't let them touch you, he said. I promise I won't. But we've got to hurry. Look down there. There were more sharks than ever now around the peach. The water was boiling with them. There must have been 90 or 100 at least. And to the travelers on top, it certainly seemed as though the peach were sinking lower and lower into the water. Action stations, James shouted. Jump to it. There's not a moment to lose. He was the captain now, and everyone knew it. They would do whatever he told them to. All hands below deck except Earthworm, he ordered. Yes, yes, they said eagerly as they scuttled into the tunnel entrance. Come on, let's hurry. And you, Centipede, James shouted. Hop downstairs and get that silkworm to work at once. Tell her to spin as she's never spun before. Our lives depend upon it. And the same applies to you, Miss Spider. Hurry on down. Start spinning. Chapter 22. In a few minutes, everything was ready. It was very quiet now on top of the peach. There was nobody in sight. Nobody except Earthworm. One half of the earthworm, looking like a great, thick, juicy pink sausage, lay innocently in the sun for all the seagulls to see. The other half of him was dangling down the tunnel. James was crouching close beside the earthworm in the tunnel entrance, just below the surface, waiting for the first seagull. He had a loop of silk string in his hands. The old green grasshopper and the ladybug were farther down the tunnel, holding on to the earthworm's tail, ready to pull him quickly in out of danger as soon as James gave the word. And far below, in the great hollow stone of the peach, the glowworm was lighting up the room so that the two spinners, the silkworm and Miss Spider, could see what they were doing. The centipede was down there too, exhorting them both frantically to greater efforts, and every now and again, James could hear his voice coming up faintly from the depths, shouting, Spin, silkworm, spin, you great fat lazy brute! Faster, faster, or we'll throw you to the sharks. Here comes the first seagull, whispered James. Keep still now, earthworm. Keep still. The rest of you, get ready to pull. Please don't let it spike me, begged the earthworm. I won't. Shh. Out of the corner of one eye, James watched the seagull as it came swooping down toward the earthworm. And then suddenly it was so close that he could see its small black eyes and its curved beak. And the beak was open, ready to grab a nice piece of flesh out of the earthworm's back. Pull! Shouted James. The old green grasshopper and the ladybug gave the earthworm's tail an enormous tug, and like magic, the earthworm disappeared into the tunnel. At the same time, up went James's hand, and the seagull flew right into the loop of silk that he was holding out. The loop, which had been very cleverly made, tightened just the right amount, but not too much, around its neck. And the seagull was captured. Hooray! Shouted the old green grasshopper, peering out of the tunnel. Well done, James. Up flew the seagull with James paying out the silk string as it went. He gave it about 50 yards and then tied the string to the stem of the peach. Next one, he shouted, jumping back into the tunnel. Up you get again, earthworm. Bring up some more silk, centipede. Oh, I don't like this at all, wailed the earthworm. It only just missed me. I even felt the wind on my back as it went swishing past. Shh, whispered James. Keep still. Here comes another one. So they did it again, and again, and again, and again. And the seagulls kept coming, and James caught them one after the other and tethered them to the peach stem. 100 seagulls, he shouted, wiping the sweat from his face. Keep going, they cried. Keep going, James. 200 seagulls. 300 seagulls, 400 seagulls. The sharks, as though sensing that they were in danger of losing their prey, were hurling themselves at the peach more furiously than ever, and the peach was sinking lower and lower in the water. 500 seagulls, James shouted. Silkworm says she's running out of silk, yelled the centipede from below. She says she can't keep it up much longer, nor can Miss Spider. Tell them they've got to, James answered. They can't stop now. We're lifting, somebody shouted. No, we're not. I felt it. Put on another seagull, quick. Quiet, everybody, quiet. Here's one coming now. This was the 501st seagull, and the moment that James caught it and tethered it to the stem with all the others, the whole enormous peach suddenly started rising up slowly out of the water. Look out, here we go. Hold on, boys. But then it stopped, and there it hung. It hovered and swayed, but it went no higher. The bottom of it was just touching the water. It was like a delicately balanced scale that needed only the tiniest push to tip it in one way or the other. One more will do it, shouted the old green grasshopper, looking out of the tunnel. We're almost there. And now came the big moment. Quickly, the 502nd seagull was caught and harnessed to the peach stem. And then suddenly, but slowly, majestically, like some fabulous golden balloon, with all the seagulls straining at the strings above, the giant peach rose up, dripping out of the water, and began climbing toward the heavens. Chapter 23. In a flash, everybody was up on top. Oh, isn't it beautiful, they cried. What a marvelous feeling. Goodbye, sharks. Oh boy, this is the way to travel. Miss Spider, who was literally squealing with excitement, grabbed the centipede by the waist, and the two of them started dancing around and around the peach stem together. The earthworm stood up on his tail and did a sort of wriggle of joy all by himself. The old green grasshopper kept hopping higher and higher in the air. The ladybug rushed over and shook James warmly by the hand. The glowworm, who at the best of times was a very shy and silent creature, sat glowing with pleasure near the tunnel entrance. Even the silkworm, looking white and thin and completely exhausted, came creeping out of the tunnel to watch this miraculous ascent. Up and up and up they went, and soon they were as high as the top of a church steeple above the ocean. I'm a bit worried about the peach, James said to the others, as soon as all the dancing and shouting had stopped. I wonder how much damage those sharks have done to it underneath. It's quite impossible to tell from up here. Why don't I go over the side and make an inspection, Miss Spider said. It'll be no trouble at all, I assure you. And without waiting for an answer, she quickly produced a length of silk thread and attached the end of it to the peach stem. I'll be back in a jiffy, she said. And then she walked calmly over to the edge of the peach and jumped off, paying out the thread behind her as she fell. But the others crowded anxiously around the place where she had gone over. Wouldn't it be dreadful if the thread broke, the ladybug said. There was a rather long silence. Are you all right, Miss Spider? Shouted the old green grasshopper. Yes, thank you, her voice answered from below. I'm coming up now. And up she came, climbing foot over foot up the silk thread, and at the same time tucking the thread back cleverly into her body as she climbed past it. Isn't it awful? They asked her. Is it all eaten away? Are there great holes in it everywhere? Miss Spider clambered back onto the deck with a pleased, but also rather puzzled look on her face. You won't believe this, she said, but actually there's hardly any damage down there at all. The peach is almost untouched. There are just a few tiny pieces out of it here and there, but nothing more. You must be mistaken, James told her. Of course she's mistaken, the centipede said. I promise you I'm not, the spider answered. But there were hundreds of sharks around us. They churned the water into a froth. We saw their great mouths opening and shutting. I don't care what you saw, Miss Spider answered. They certainly didn't do much damage to the peach. Then why did we start sinking? The centipede asked. Perhaps we didn't start sinking, the old green grasshopper suggested. Perhaps we were all so frightened that we simply imagined it. This, in point of fact, was closer to the truth than any of them knew. A shark, you see, has an extremely long, sharp nose, and its mouth is set very awkwardly underneath its face and a long way back. This makes it more or less impossible for it to get its teeth into a vast, smooth, curving surface, such as the side of a peach. Even if the creature turns onto its back, it still can't do it, because the nose always gets in the way. If you've ever seen a small dog trying to get its teeth into an enormous ball, then you will be able to imagine roughly how it was with the sharks and the peach. It must have been some kind of magic, the ladybug said. The holes must have healed up by themselves. Oh, look, there's a ship below us, shouted James. Everybody rushed to the side and peered over. None of them had ever seen a ship before. It looks like a big one. It's got 3 funnels. You can even see the people on the decks. Let's wave to them. Do you think they can see us? Neither James nor any of the others knew it, but the ship that was now passing beneath them was actually the Queen Mary, sailing out of the English Channel on her way to America. And on the bridge of the Queen Mary, the astonished captain was standing with a group of his officers, all of them gaping at the great round ball hovering overhead. I don't like it, the captain said. Nor do I, said the first officer. Do you think it's following us? Said the second officer. I tell you I don't like it, muttered the captain. It could be dangerous, the first officer said. That's it, cried the captain. It's a secret weapon. Holy cats! Send the message to the Queen at once. The country must be warned. And give me my telescope. The first officer handed the telescope to the captain. The captain put it to his eye. There's birds everywhere, he cried. The whole sky is teeming with birds. What in the world are they doing? And wait a second. There are people on it. I can see them moving. There's do I have this darn thing focused right? It looks like a little boy in short trousers. Yes, I can distinctly see a little boy in short trousers standing up there. And there's a sort of giant ladybug. Now just a minute, Captain, the first officer said. And a colossal green grasshopper. Captain, the first officer said sharply. Captain, please. And a mammoth spider. Oh dear, he's been at the whiskey again, whispered the second officer. And an enormous, simply enormous centipede, screamed the captain. Call the ship's doctor, the first officer said. Our captain is not well. A moment later, the great round ball disappeared into a cloud, and the people on the ship never saw it again. Chapter 24. But up on the beach itself, everyone was still happy and excited. I wonder where we'll finish up this time, the earthworm said. Who cares, they answered. Seagulls always go back to the land sooner or later. Up and up they went, high above the highest clouds, the peach swaying gently from side to side as it floated along. Wouldn't this be a perfect time for a little music, the ladybug asked. How about it, old grasshopper? With pleasure, dear lady, the old green grasshopper answered, bowing from the waist. Oh, hooray, he's going to play for us, they cried, and immediately the whole company sat themselves down in a circle around the old green musician, and the concert began. From the moment that the first note was struck, the audience became completely spellbound. And as for James, never had he heard such beautiful music as this. In the garden at home on summer evenings, he had listened many times to the sound of grasshoppers chirping in the grass, and he had always liked the noise that they made. But this was a different kind of noise altogether. This was real music. Chords, harmonies, tunes, and all the rest to it. And what a wonderful instrument the old green grasshopper was playing on. It was like a violin. It was almost exactly as though he were playing upon a violin. The bow of the violin, the part that moved, was his back leg. The strings of the violin, the part that made the sound, was the edge of his wing. He was using only the top of his back leg, the thigh, and he was stroking this up and down against the edge of his wing with incredible skill, sometimes slowly, sometimes fast, but always with the same easy flowing action. It was precisely the way a clever violinist would have used his bow, and the music came pouring out and filled the whole blue sky around them with magic melodies. When the first part was finished, everyone clapped madly, and Miss Spider stood up and shouted, "Bravo! Encore! Give us some more!" Did you like that, James? The old green grasshopper asked, smiling at the small boy. Oh, I loved it, James answered. It was beautiful. It was as though you had a real violin in your hands. A real violin, the old green grasshopper cried. Good heavens, I like that. My dear boy, I am a real violin. It is part of my very own body. But do all grasshoppers play their music on violins the same way as you do? James asked him. No, he answered, not all. If you want to know, I happen to be a short-horned grasshopper. I have two short feelers coming out of my head. Can you see them? There they are. They are quite short, aren't they? Why they call me a shorthorn. And we shorthorns are the only ones who play our music in the violin style, using a bow. My long-horned relatives, the one who have long curvy feelers coming out of their heads, make their music simply by rubbing the edges of their two top wings together. They are not violinists, they are wing rubbers, and a rather inferior noise these wing rubbers produce too, if I may say so. It sounds more like a banjo than a fiddle. How fascinating this all is, cried James. And to think that up until now I had never even wondered how a grasshopper made his sounds. My dear young fellow, the old green grasshopper said gently, there are a whole lot of things in this world of ours that you haven't started wondering about yet. Where, for example, do you think that I keep my ears? Your ears? Why, in your head, of course. Everyone burst out laughing. You mean you don't even know that? Cried the centipede. Try again, said the old green grasshopper, smiling at James. You can't possibly keep them anywhere else. Oh, can't I? Well, I give up. Where do you keep them? Right here, the old green grasshopper said. One on each side of my tummy. It's not true. Of course it's true. What's so peculiar about that? You ought to see where my cousins, the crickets and the katydids, keep theirs. Where do they keep them? In their legs. One in each front leg, just below the knee. You mean you didn't know that either? The centipede said scornfully. You're joking, James said. Nobody could possibly have ears in his legs. Why not? Because it's ridiculous, that's why. You know what I think is ridiculous, the centipede said, grinning away as usual. I don't mean to be rude, but I think it is ridiculous to have ears on the side of one's head. It certainly looks ridiculous. You ought to take a peek in the mirror some day and see for yourself. Pest, cried the earthworm. Why must you always be so rude and rambunctious to everyone? You ought to apologize to James at once. Chapter 25. James didn't want the earthworm and the centipede to get into another argument, so he said quickly to the earthworm, Tell me, do you play any kind of music? No, but I do other things, some of which are really quite extraordinary, the earthworm said, brightening. Such as what? Asked James. Well, the earthworm said, next time you stand in a field or in a garden and look around you, then just remember this, that every grain of soil upon the surface of the land, every tiny little bit of soil that you can see, has actually passed through the body of an earthworm during the last few years. Isn't that wonderful? It's not possible, said James. My dear boy, it is a fact. You mean you actually swallow soil? Like mad, the earthworm said proudly. In one end and out the other. But what's the point? What do you mean, what's the point? Why do you do it? We do it for the farmers. It makes the soil nice and light and crumbly so that things will grow well in it. If you really want to know, the farmers couldn't do without us. We are essential. We are vital. So it is only natural that the farmer should love us. He loves us even more, I believe, than he loves the ladybug. The ladybug, said James, turning to look at her. Do they love you too? I am told that they do, the ladybug answered modestly, blushing all over. In fact, I understand that in some places the farmers love us so much that they go out and buy live ladybugs by the sackful and take them home and set them free in their fields. They are very pleased when they have lots of ladybugs in the fields. But why? James asked. Because we gobble up all the nasty little insects that are gobbling up all the farmers' crops. It helps enormously, and we ourselves don't charge a penny for our services. I think you are wonderful, James told her. Can I ask you one special question? Please do. Well, is it really true that I can tell how old a ladybug is by counting her spots? Oh no, that's just a children's story, the ladybug said. We never change our spots. Some of us, of course, are born with more spots than others, but we never change them. The number of spots that a ladybug has is simply a way of showing which branch of the family she belongs to. I, for example, as you can see for yourself, am a 9-spotted ladybug. I am very lucky. It's a fine thing to be. It is indeed, said James, gazing at the beautiful scarlet shell with the 9 black spots on it. On the other hand, the ladybug went on, some of my less fortunate relatives have no more than 2 spots altogether on their shells. Can you imagine that? They are called 2-spotted ladybugs, and very common and ill-mannered they are, I regret to say. And then, of course, you have the 5-spotted ladybugs as well. They are much nicer than the 2-spotted ones, although I myself find them a trifle too saucy for my taste. But they are all of them loved, said James. Yes, the ladybug answered quietly. They are all of them loved. It seems that almost everyone around here is loved, said James. How nice this is. Not me, cried the centipede happily. I am a pest, and I am proud of it. Oh, I'm such a shocking, dreadful pest. Hear, hear, the earthworm said. But what about you, Miss Spider? Asked James. Aren't you also much loved by the world? Alas, no, Miss Spider answered, sighing long and loud. I am not loved at all, and yet I do nothing but good. All day long I catch flies and mosquitoes in my webs. I am a decent person. I know you are, said James. It is very unfair the way we spiders are treated, Miss Spider went on. Why, only last week your own horrible Aunt Sponge flushed my poor dear father down the plug hole in the bathtub. Oh, how awful, cried James. I watched the whole thing from a corner in the ceiling, Miss Spider murmured. It was ghastly. We never saw him again. A large tear rolled down her cheek and fell with a splash on the floor. But is it not very unlucky to kill a spider? James inquired, looking around at the others. Of course it's unlucky to kill a spider, shouted the centipede. It's about the unluckiest thing anyone can do. Look what happened to Aunt Sponge after she'd done that. Bump! We all felt it, didn't we, as the peach went over her? Whoa, what a lovely bump that must have been for you, Miss Spider. It was very satisfactory, Miss Spider answered. Will you sing us a song about it, please? So the centipede did. Aunt Sponge was terrifically fat, and tremendously flabby at that. Her tummy and waist were as soggy as paste. It was worse on the place where she sat. So she said, I must make myself flat. I must make myself sleek as a cat. I shall do without dinner to make myself thinner. But along came the peach, oh, the beautiful peach, and made her far thinner than that. That was very nice, Miss Spider said. Now sing one about Aunt Spiker. With pleasure, the centipede answered, grinning. Aunt Spiker was thin as a wire, and as dry as a bone, only drier. She was so long and thin, if you carried her in, you could use her for poking the fire. I must do something quickly, she frowned. I want fat, I want pound upon pound. I must eat lots and lots of marshmallows and chocks, till I start bulging all around. Ah, yes, she announced, I have sworn that I'll alter my figure by dawn. Cried the peach with a snicker, I'll alter your figure, and iron her out on the lawn. Everybody clapped and called out for more songs from the centipede, who at once launched into his favorite song of all. Once upon a time, when pigs were swine, and monkeys chewed tobacco, and hens took snuff to make themselves tough, and the ducks said quack, quack, quacko, and porcupines drank fiery wines, and goats ate tapioca, and old Mother Hubbard got stuck in the Look out, centipede, cried James. Look out! Chapter 26. The centipede, who had begun dancing wildly around the deck during the song, had suddenly gone too close to the downward curving edge of the peach, and for 3 awful seconds he had started teetering on the brink, swinging his legs frantically in circles in an effort to stop himself from falling over backward into space. But before anyone could reach him, down he went. He gave a shriek of terror as he fell, and the others, rushing to the side and peering over, saw his poor long body tumbling over and over through the air, getting smaller and smaller until it was out of sight. Silkworm, yelled James, quick, start spinning! The silkworm sighed, for she was still very tired from spinning all that silk for the seagulls. But she did as she was told. I'm going down after him, cried James, grabbing the silk string as it started coming out of the silkworm, and tying the end of it around his waist. The rest of you hold on to Silkworm so I don't pull her over with me. And later on, if you feel 3 tugs on the string, start hauling me up again." He jumped, and he went tumbling down after the centipede. Down, 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 toward the sea below. And you can imagine how quickly the silkworm had to spin to keep up with the speed of his fall. "We'll never see either of them again," cried the ladybug. Oh dear, just when we were all so happy, too." Miss Spider, the glowworm, and the ladybug all began to cry. So did the earthworm. "I don't care a bit about the centipede," the earthworm sobbed, "but I really did love that little boy." Very softly, the old green grasshopper started to play the funeral march on his violin. And by the time he had finished, everyone, including himself, was in a flood of tears. Suddenly, there came 3 sharp tugs on the rope. "Pull!" shouted the old green grasshopper. "Everyone get behind me and pull!" There was about a mile of string to be hauled in, but they all worked like mad, and in the end, over the side of the peach there appeared a dripping wet James with a dripping wet centipede clinging to him tightly, with all 42 of his legs. "He saved me," gasped the centipede. "He swam around in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean until he found me." "My dear boy," the old green grasshopper said, patting James on the back, "I do congratulate you." "My boots!" cried the centipede. "Just look at my precious boots. They are ruined by the water." "Be quiet," the earthworm said. "You are lucky to be alive." "Are we still going up and up?" asked James. "We certainly are," answered the old green grasshopper. "And it's beginning to get dark." "I know, it'll soon be night." "Why don't we all go down below and keep warm until tomorrow morning?" Miss Spider suggested. "No," the old green grasshopper said. "I think that would be very unwise. It will be safer if we all stay up here through the night and keep watch. Then, if anything happens, we shall anyway be ready for it." And that is where we will stop for today. We will see what happens next for James and his friends tomorrow. Bye.